Hello and welcome to this short video about the research that I, Jule Krüger, and my PhD supervisor Daniel Bodemer have been doing at the University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany. In this video, I will present a pilot study on the role of spatial abilities when learning about the structure of 3D objects in augmented reality. In augmented reality, or AR, virtual elements are added into the real world, which can lead to a unique spatiality of AR visualizations. Virtual objects can be anchored to any possible point in the real world, adding spatially relevant information exactly where they should be in the real-world space. Also, virtual elements can be three-dimensional in a way that is not the same as 3D objects in a usual non-AR visualization. For example, the possibility to move around an object and view it from different perspectives adds motion-based depth cues that can convey a more realistic 3D visualization in AR. This dimensionality may also influence learning processes and outcomes because learners can perceive spatial information about the object differently and maybe even process it more easily. Spatial representation is often mentioned as a key feature of AR in education. Also, there are many studies that show the advantages of AR applications in particularly spatial domains like architecture, geography, or engineering. Using 3D AR may thus be especially useful for learning spatial structures of or spatial relationships between objects. While it seems obvious that AR can play an important role for learning about spatial objects, one factor that should be taken into account for 3D AR learning experiences are individual spatial abilities of learners. Spatial abilities in general have to do with the processing of spatial distributions of objects in 2D or 3D space. An important competence here is forming and manipulating mental representations of these objects. Different spatial abilities can play a role for learning about and memorizing the structure of 3D objects. To memorize a complete 3D mental representation, 3D spatial visualization abilities are very important. On the other hand, some research suggests that 3D objects may be memorized as static 2D images of the object from different perspectives, so that 2D spatial memory abilities may also be important for remembering the spatial structure of an object. It is not completely clear if learners with lower spatial abilities are supported or disadvantaged when learning with 3D AR visualizations. Concerning the influence of spatial abilities on learning with 3D visualizations, support for two hypotheses exists: an ability as compensator and an ability as enhancer hypothesis. The ability as compensator hypothesis states that learners with low spatial abilities profit from 3D visualizations due to additional spatial information, while these are not necessary for learners with high spatial abilities. The ability as enhancer hypothesis states that learners with high spatial abilities have the skills to profit from 3D visualizations, while learners with low spatial abilities are disadvantaged. In the current study, we wanted to further explore the role of spatial abilities in the specific case of learning with an AR 3D visualization, which may differ from learning with the usual 3D visualization. Our research question was, which role do spatial abilities play when learning about spatial objects in AR? We executed a pilot study with which we want to underline the importance of research on the role of spatial abilities when learning about 3D objects in AR. In a between subjects design with two groups, one group executed a learning task with a 3D visualization in AR, the other with a 3D non-AR visualization, both on mobile devices. 33 participants with a mean age around 24 to 25 years were included in the analyses. The learning material was the spatial structure of the 16 pressurized modules of the International Space Station, ISS. The modules were shown in a low-poly version, without details and without the solar panels surrounding them. Each module was labeled with its name, and clicking on the module expanded those labels with additional information. On the left, the AR version of the application, in which perspective changes were possible through movement around the marker and through moving the marker around, can be seen. On the right, the non-AR version, which had a completely touch-based interaction, is displayed. To learn more about the role of spatial abilities when learning with 3D AR visualizations, we measured two achievement-related outcome variables and the two types of spatial abilities. One of the achievement-related variables was learning task achievement, which we measured through the number of correctly answered multiple-choice questions about the 16 different modules of the ISS during the learning phase. Questions were, for example, which module was the first module of the ISS and which module serves as an airlock. Learning outcome was measured through the number of correctly named modules in a knowledge test after the learning phase. Each module name could be assigned to a module in a static visualization from one perspective. For both tasks, scores from 0 to 16 were possible. To measure 3D spatial visualization abilities, we use the revised Purdue spatial visualization test with a focus on the visualization of rotations, the PSVTR, where the rotation of one object has to be transferred to the rotation of another object. 2D spatial memory abilities were measured with the Corsi block tapping task, in which sequences of blocks changing their color need to be recalled. In addition to these 4 main variables, we also measured cognitive load, task load, and motivation with different questionnaires. The procedure of the study included first the 2 spatial ability tests, then the learning phase, which differed for the 2 groups, AR and non-AR, then the questionnaires on the additional variables in reference to the learning task, then the knowledge tests, and in the end, again the questionnaires in reference to the knowledge test. To test how the different visualizations in general had an influence on learning task and knowledge test achievement, we tested for differences between the 2 groups. Descriptively and with a small effect size, the non-AR group, which is left in the figure, showed a higher task score, but in a Mann-Whitney U-test, which we used because we did not find the data to be normally distributed, no significant difference was found between the 2 groups. Concerning the knowledge test, the AR group showed a descriptively higher score with a small effect size, but again, no significant difference was found between the 2 groups. The results concerning the 2 achievement variables thus indicate that although learning task execution may have been slightly better with a non-AR application, learning outcomes may have been slightly better with the AR version. In order to see how the PSVTR score and thus 3D spatial visualization abilities had an influence on the relationship between the type of application and achievement, moderation analyses were executed. While no significant interaction was found concerning knowledge test score, a significant interaction was found concerning learning task score. In the figure you can see the simple slopes with the yellow dashed and dotted lines representing high, average and low spatial abilities. We found that learners with lower 3D spatial visualization abilities profited from the AR visualization concerning learning task score, while learners with higher abilities did not. To get a more complete picture, we looked at the data from the different questionnaires and found the same pattern of this interaction concerning intrinsic cognitive load, thus showing an increase of this variable for lower but a decrease for higher abilities learners. In order to see how the Corsi block tapping task score and thus 2D spatial memory abilities had an influence on the relationship between the type of application and achievement, again moderation analyses were executed. While no significant interaction was found concerning learning task score, a significant interaction was found concerning knowledge test score. We found that learners with higher 2D spatial memory abilities profited from the AR visualization concerning knowledge test score, while learners with lower abilities did not. To get a more complete picture, we looked at the data from the different questionnaires again and found the opposite pattern of this interaction concerning mental demand, thus showing an increase of this variable for lower but a decrease for higher abilities learners. In this pilot study, we thus found that learning with a 3D AR visualization was influenced differently through different spatial abilities and concerning different achievement variables. Concerning learning task results, only lower 3D spatial visualization abilities learners profited from AR, and somehow an increase in intrinsic cognitive load may have played a role here that is not completely straightforward. Concerning knowledge test results, only higher 2D spatial memory abilities learners profited from AR, and this may have been due to an increase in mental demand for lower abilities learners during test execution. In general, it can be concluded that it is important to take a closer look at spatial abilities for learning with 3D AR visualizations, because influence of different kinds of spatial abilities may depend on the kind of task or the stage in the learning process. This study was only an exploratory pilot study, and a lot more research on this is necessary, including bigger sample sizes, systematic manipulations, and hypothesis-based investigations. It should be considered in both research and practice that learners' spatial abilities may be a central factor when using AR in education. Thank you very much for watching our video. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions about our research. We hope to see you during the live presentation.